that we are only 17 days into our new year. But do you wonder if things are going to get better? I mean, honestly, do you really think things are going to get better? Or is this as good as it gets? And so what I want you to know just right off the top here is that I have been asking those same questions. I'm asking those questions too. And I'm the one who is divinely optimistic. I mean, most of the time, right? And so I'm going to ask you to just kind of bear with me here because I want to take a very short little detour before I begin the heart of my message today. Why? Because I think we need a reality check. And I promise to connect all the dots before I wrap up my message today. And trust me, like, every minister this morning, this particular topic is on every minister's mind this morning. So let's just hold all pastors of all faith, right, in our hearts and in our prayers this morning. So I just want to start by sharing a few observations with you. Now, I think that these are things that we can all agree upon, which is why I think it's important that we acknowledge them together. For instance, another week, another milestone in the number of COVID deaths. Last Tuesday, 4,400, a record high, the highest death toll since the pandemic began. Another week, another benchmark number of Americans who just want a job and a paycheck and a real leader to create real economic opportunities. Another week, another historic moment in our nation's democracy, especially in the aftermath of the assault on our Capitol that continues to unfold, and we, the people, continue to hold individuals who participated in this. We continue to hold them accountable for their actions. Now, I want to hit the pause button here for just a minute so that I can touch on this. Now, in light of everything that has been revealed about this attack, I think it's incredibly important that we just take a moment here together for me to speak about this exact time right here, right now, right where we are in this historic time in our history. Now, when I take in all of the footage, at least that I've seen in this last week and a half or so, like the Confederate flag waving in the rotunda, or the image of a noose, or tattoos with swastikas and other t-shirts with horrible things written on them about Auschwitz. You may have seen some of them too, and so much more, honestly. But when I think about all of this, it is undeniable to me that this points directly at the racism, the level of racism that permeates our society, that permeates our culture still. I would add still. And so this is why, for many white people, watching these events was really about the violence and the chaos that was unfolding. And yet for people of color, for Jewish people, it was an all too familiar dark side of humanity playing out once again, something that just brought even more pain, perhaps to their day. And so in the underbelly of the domestic terrorism that we experienced are white supremacy and Christian nationalism. Now, these are not the only issues, of course. These are not the only issues. That is true. But they certainly are at the top of the list. And to make matters worse, there are these reckless conspiracy theories just floating around out there in the ethers, these thought forms that are landing in people's minds that have zero basis in terms of credible sources. I mean, some of this stuff is just cockamamie crazy, right? And it is astonishing, truly, truly astonishing. But instead of going down that rabbit hole, I just want to remind you, I want us to remember that our master teacher and our way shower, Jesus, left us a simple command to help us discern what to do during times of confusion. And here it is: love one another. That's the measure. Plain and simple. If the actions and the narrative support and align with love, fabulous, great, thumbs up. If they do not, no go. It's a no go. I mean, it really is that, it's that simple. Are you with me? Are you with me? Now, I want to be clear, especially because the word unity has been banted about so much in this last week and a half or so. And so I want to be very, very clear about this, that to love one another doesn't mean that we just, I'm the first one in. Okay, you know that. If you know me, you know this is true. I am the first one in the circle to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. That is true. But that is not what this is about. Because we cannot spiritually bypass this moment of reckoning in our nation. This is the moment. We must meet this moment and stand in spiritual principle as we know it. And so, in order to have unity, we must have accountability. And in order to have accountability, we must acknowledge the truth about racism and anti-Semitism. And in order to have truth about racism and anti-Semitism, we must have justice. We must. And so, since tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, in his honor, I want to share one of his teachings with you. Dr. King said, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice." Amen. It's not just the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice, because, as he also said, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And so, as a unity minister, as your unity minister, I am doing a Back to Basics series called Unity in a Nutshell 2021. And I've been doing this every year for, I think this is my 5th year, because I love it, because I love these spiritual principles and I love sharing them with you. They changed my life for the better. I know that they can do the same for you. They called me to a higher understanding of God. They changed the way I view how the world works. They changed my own insights and ahas about what is mine to do. That's how I answered my call to ministry. And you know what? If you work it, it works if you work it, right? I promise you, if you apply these principles, these spiritual principles to your life, things will be a whole lot better. I wouldn't be here if that were not true for me and so many others. Now, I also say take what resonates with you. We don't have any big dogma or creed. We don't insist, that you believe what we believe. But, open your mind, open your heart, and be open to this kind of transformation. And so let's talk about unity. Let's talk about unity. Unity is a positive path for spiritual living based on the practical teachings of Jesus the Christ. Now, we are a part of what is called New Thought. And just for clarity, we are not Christian Science. We are not Unitarian. We are not Unitarian Universalists. We are not New Age. New Thought is not New Age. Now, for some people, that can be a little confusing. We are not New Age. As I shared last week, Unity was co-founded in the late 1800s by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore in Missouri, and it is based in Kansas City, Missouri, and is based in affirmative prayer. Now, I'm going to get to that in a couple of weeks in that particular principle. But for us, it is all about our understanding that Jesus is the example, not the exception, of how to embody and express God as the one true source of all that is. Let me just say that again. Jesus is the example, not the exception. And we believe that this potential is true for all human beings. All of us. And so it's important to know that we are not just like hanging out here in some kind of magical thinking and la la lands, like, just woo. This is not woo woo, right? But we have these practical spiritual teachings, that these principles that we apply to our daily lives, and we do this in a consistent way that are profoundly relevant to what is happening, not only in our own lives, but in the world around us. Profoundly relevant. And so I don't know about you, but I can't embrace some kind of like frou-frou spirituality that just can't even stand the test of fire, so to speak. That's not for me, right? I need something solid that is going to be there, the rock for me, to borrow an idea from some of our other brothers and sisters, the rock, right? That is always there for me in the midst of any circumstance. And so we need to be spiritually mature enough to be present to what's happening in our lives and what's happening in the world. And at the same time, have a vision of possibility based on these spiritual principles. Because when pain pushes, vision will pull. When pain pushes, vision pulls. Thank goodness, right? And so last week we took a look at principle number 1. God is absolute good, everywhere present. Another way to say this is, as we do in our opening prayer, there is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, God the good. Now, if you missed last week's, I encourage you to either go to our YouTube channel and you can see just the talk itself, or you may go back for the service in the Facebook archives here. But if you missed that, I encourage you to kind of circle back and give a listen. So today we're going to explore principle number 2, which is, are you ready? Bing! Drum roll, here we go. Human beings have a spark of divinity within them, the Christ spirit within, the very essence of God. This very essence is of God, and therefore they are also inherently good. Oh, goodness. Now, I must tell you, the fact that, everyone is inherently good, this is why this particular spiritual principle can be the one that people bump up against the most, because it can be a real theological challenge, right? I mean, have you turned on the news? Of course you have. especially depending on your background. Now, you can probably guess why. Most people don't really have an issue with God being good, but will draw the line at humanity being good. But keep in mind, as we talked about last week, we all have this little thing called free will. And it is our free will that allows us to choose how we express God. It's our free will that allows us to decide what we're going to do each step of the way. It is our free will that determines what we invest our time and our energy into. You are in charge of what you invest your precious time and energy into. And so, in a nutshell, what this means is that because God is everywhere present, it is our belief that individuals contain this spark of divinity. I mean, isn't that just fun to say? Spark of divinity. I am a spark of divinity. You are a spark of divinity. Isn't that wonderful news? And so here's the other wonderful news. You didn't put it there and you cannot take it out. No. So, of course, you're wondering, well, how did this spark of divinity innately get inside of me? And so for the answer for that, we turn to the creation story. Now, most of us are, of course, familiar with the creation story, but I'm going to share a couple of verses here that are pinpoint for the unity perspective. Here we go. Genesis chapter 1. God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. He created them. And God blessed them. God blessed them. Did you catch that? God created humankind, male and female, and blessed them. So this is why we believe in original blessing, not sin. And so you're not like, some kind of obscure, isolated creation in some kind of alternate universe. You, boo, are an expression of God. I am an expression of God. Say that with me. I am an expression of God. Yes. And so you are not an original sinner. You are the beloved of the beloved. And you are blessed. You are so blessed. You're not a worm of the dust. You are an angel of the Most High. This is why, my precious ones, we really relate to the statement, born fine the first time. Born fine the first time. Let's say that together in the sanctuary of your own home. Say this with me together. Born fine the first time. Now, this is also a similar kind of awareness that Jesus had when he said, the Father and I are one. The Father and I are one. So you see, there is a God seed in the soul of you, and you can never be truly disconnected from this God seed, this divinity, this blessing, this spark, which is innately in you. Now, you didn't put it there. Again, you didn't put it there, and you can't take it out, right? Now, you may think that you can, but you cannot. You cannot. Now, this is why you so often hear me say there is only one thing that ever really needs to be healed in our lives, and that is our sense of separation, our separation from ourselves, our separation from others, and our separation from God. Now, having said all of this, I enjoy a good Adam and Eve story as much as the next person. Like the one about how Adam was just staying out all late hours, wandering around fields, late at night. So one morning, Eve said, Adam, why are you staying out so late? Are you seeing another woman? To which, Adam, of course, said, that's nonsense. You are the only woman for me. No, literally, you were the only woman on earth. Well, they squabbled most of the night. Adam finally fell asleep, but awoke to being poked in the chest, which of course it was Eve. And he said, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing? And she said, counting your ribs. That's another part of Genesis. Okay, so in her book, The 5 Principles, highly recommend. Ellen Davenport talks about it this way. She says, the best example that I know to describe our divinity compares humans to God like waves on the ocean. Each of us is distinct as a wave, yet made up of precisely the energy and attributes of Mother Ocean itself. We are not the whole ocean, but we are the same composition, nothing more, nothing less. This is one of my favorite metaphors. And so, like the ocean is in the wave, and the wave is in the ocean, we can never be separate from God. We cannot be separate from God. We can never be separate from our source. We can't be disconnected from this divinity that is innately within us. I mean, again, we may think that we can. We may be under some kind of illusion. We may be delusional that we can, but we cannot truly be disconnected. We cannot. Now, think about this as well. And I want you to be ready for this. So I want to know that you're with me. I want you to hear this. Our master teacher, Jesus, also taught that the one who believes in me will do the works that I do, and in fact will even do greater works. Now, I have to tell you, there are many days when I just wish he hadn't said that. I think most of us just wish he had not said that or taught that, right? And this is really interesting, I think, because when we think that somehow we can do the works that Jesus did, and even greater. Now, I'll just speak for myself. Like what happens for me is I immediately start thinking about all the miracle stories, right? Like walking on water or turning water into wine or multiplying fishes and loaves. And the minute that I do that, I get caught up in that as if it gives me permission, because I think I can't walk on water. And then the next thing I know, I'm also thinking that Jesus's other teachings were miracles. And so I don't pay as much attention to things like love one another. Again, love one another. That's the measure. And is there anyone here who does not understand love one another? So you think you can't do the miracles. Okay, can you love one another? And so my question for you this morning is, who would you be if you really embodied this teaching? Right? Like, who would you be if you made all the decisions in your life from the awareness that you are a spark of the divine? If you really knew at the core of your being that you are born fine the first time and you don't need to convert to anything. You don't need to convert to anything, because you can never be separate from God, your source. The life within you is the life of God. The mind within you is the mind of God. The power within you is the power of God. And so, as I mentioned earlier, tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And so for your heart work this week, I want you to take these words with you. I want you to embody these very words. Dr. King said, nonviolence means avoiding not only the external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. Do you hear the difference? It's not just about the external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. He says, you not only refuse to shoot a man, but you refuse to hate him. And as we explore unity, that is the place to start. We must simply start by refusing to hate. Now, I know that that sounds like a tall order given our current state of affairs. I do believe that they're getting better. You know why? Because of you and me. Because we are the ones. This message is so powerful. You know, if you've known me for a minute, you know that I want to create some unity disciples, right? So if you're going to spread a message, spread this message, right? Born fine the first time. You are made in the image and likeness of God. Born fine the first time. The life within you is the life of God. The mind within you is the mind of God. And the power within you is the power of God. So, of course, things are getting better. Our ever greater good is always unfolding. And so ends our message for today. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.